Hello, I'm Jake Boudreau, civic journalist at Tellil Community Television. This week on The Record. The MLA for Richmond is no longer in the provincial cabinet. A former RCMP officer is scheduled to appear in Port Hawkesbury Provincial Court next month facing sexual assault charges. Officials with the municipality of the County of Inverness talked to Richmond Municipal Council about a project remembering the Inverness County Asylum. A Richmond County man was arrested for impaired driving and stunting after he allegedly fled from police. Local emergency health services employees were recognized for their years of service. Local municipalities are participating in a provincial climate change program. And local volunteer fire departments were approved for provincial funding. But first, a Richmond County couple found guilty last February on sexual charges involving a young person were sentenced. Daryl and Shelley DeGoo received prison time in Port Hawkesbury Provincial Court on October 16th. Nova Scotia Public Prosecution Service said the DeGoos were both found guilty of sexual assault and failure to appear while at large on a confirmed undertaking. The sentence included 5 years custody at a federal facility, a firearms prohibition for 10 years, a prohibition order for 20 years from certain activities that may have them in contact with people under the age of 16, a lifetime sex offender information registration order, and a DNA order, PPS noted. On May 26, 2023, Richmond County District RCMP received a report of possible sexual exploitation involving Daryl and Shelley DeGoo. Upon investigating, the RCMP determined that in 2020, a young person was sexually assaulted by the DeGoos. On May 29, 2023, RCMP officers arrested the couple at a home in Barra Head. They were jointly charged with sexual assault, sexual interference, and sexual exploitation. Richmond County District RCMP said at the time there may be additional victims connected to the DeGoos, and were encouraging others to come forward. Richmond County District RCMP said in a press release issued just before midnight on June 9, 2023, that they were notified at 6:45 p.m. that day that the DeGoos were missing. The RCMP said at the time that they received a missing person report from a person who knows the DeGoos. On July 27, 2023, at around 5 p.m., the RCMP confirmed that they located the DeGoos in Lynch's River after a member of the public called in a sighting. The RCMP said they were arrested for failing to appear for their fingerprints, as required as part of their release from when they were arrested in May. On August 28, 2023, in Port Hawkesbury Provincial Court, the DeGoos were arraigned on charges of sexual assault, sexual interference, and sexual exploitation, according to PPS. Despite going missing after being charged, the DeGoos were released from custody. On October 12, 2023, in Port Hawkesbury Provincial Court, Daryl and Shelley DeGoo pleaded not guilty to charges of failing to appear in court, being at large on a confirmed undertaking, sexual assault, sexual interference, and sexual exploitation. The DeGoos later confirmed that they wanted to represent themselves and proceed with a joint trial. Last November, a mistrial was declared and charges were dropped against the DeGoos. On the first day of the trial, on October 28, 2024 in Port Hawkesbury Provincial Court, PPS said the Crown offered no evidence on a sexual exploitation charge faced by the couple, and it was dismissed by the judge. As the matter progressed, PPS added that the judge found himself in a conflict and declared a mistrial. The DeGoos were found guilty in Port Hawkesbury Provincial Court last February. On October 21st, Premier Tim Houston announced cabinet changes that the Premier's office said will enable the government to stay focused on energy and resource development. Houston will take over as Minister of Energy from Richmond MLA Trevor Boudreau. I want to turn Nova Scotia into an energy superpower, said Houston. Responsible resource development will power our economy for generations, combat poverty, and help Nova Scotians earn more money, the Premier said. Houston thanked outgoing ministers, including Boudreau, for their ongoing commitment to the people of Nova Scotia. According to the Premier's office, Boudreau will continue to sit as Richmond MLA. Houston will continue as President of the Executive Council, Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, and Minister of Trade. I am grateful to have such a strong cabinet and caucus, Houston said. Nova Scotians chose us to lead this province. We will lead this province to a more prosperous future, the Premier noted. Appointments are effective immediately following the swearing-in ceremony, the Premier's office added. Nova Scotia's Serious Incident Response Team confirmed that retired RCMP officer Daryl W. Johnson is scheduled to appear in Port Hawkesbury Provincial Court on November 13th. On October 15th, CERT said Johnson was charged with 3 counts of sexual assault. The director of CERT said he has reasonable grounds to believe that the former RCMP officer committed criminal offenses. CERT said the investigation involved conduct that was alleged to have occurred when the officer was a member of the RCMP, as well as after his retirement. As a result, a parallel investigation was conducted by CERT and the RCMP, including their Street Crime Enforcement Unit and the Interview Assistance Team. According to Nova Scotia Public Prosecution Services, the alleged incidents took place in Budladeck First Nation between October 1st, 2016 and April 15th, 2020. According to the RCMP, Johnson served with the RCMP in Nova Scotia beginning in 2002, and he retired in November 2023. Assistant Commissioner Dennis Daly, commanding officer of Nova Scotia RCMP, said the charges involve a woman known to Johnson. These charges are deeply troubling and understandably distressing to the communities we serve, Daly said in a statement. The RCMP remains steadfast in its commitment to integrity and accountability. We take all allegations of misconduct seriously, and our members are expected to uphold and surpass the high standards rightly demanded by Canadians, Daly said. During the Committee of the Whole session of Richmond Municipal Council on October 14th in Arishat, Inverness CAO Keith MacDonald and Inverness County's Director of Culture and Community Development, Morgan Murray, made a presentation about the Inverness County Asylum Commemoration Project. After the meeting, I spoke with Warden Lois Landry and Deputy Warden Brent Sampson to get their reactions to the project.
So tonight we have, next on our agenda is presentations to Council. And so tonight's presentation we have Keith MacDonald, who is the CEO of the Municipality of the County of Inverness, regarding the Inverness County Asylum Commemoration Project, and you have someone with you.
Thank you, Warden and Council and staff. Much appreciate availing the time for us to give you an update on a legacy project for Inverness County as well as our neighboring municipalities. It's one that's of historic nature, but also really defines how individuals with challenges in the past were treated. My colleague Morgan Murray is with me today. He's going to walk through the deck, and please ask any questions. I know usually it's at the end, but if there's anything you need clarity from during the presentation, do not hesitate to raise up your hand, and then we'll keep to our time frame, and any questions you may have, we'll be glad to answer.
Hi, everyone. I haven't met you all before, but I'm Morgan Murray. I'm the Director of Culture and Community Development with the Municipality of Inverness County. So I'm going to just run through kind of what the Inverness County Asylum was and what the commemoration project is and how we might be able to work together. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a historical overview, and this really relates to a fairly relevant topic now around how we treat people with disabilities and how they've been treated in the past. So just a quick timeline to give you sort of the historical context of the asylum and how it came to be. In 1754, way back, the first poorhouse opened in Halifax, and those were places to keep people who had disabilities, but also anybody who couldn't sustain themselves economically and things like that. In about 100 years later, the Mount Hope Asylum was for the insane opened in Halifax. So just a quick word on the language. The language that they used 150 some years ago is much different than the language we've come to understand is more appropriate these days. So some of the names of these institutions is quite dated. So that was the first institution specifically for people with mental disabilities. And then about 20 years later, it was recommended by the superintendent of Mount Hope Institution that more institutions were created throughout the province. And a few years after that, an act respecting jails, municipal lunatic asylums, and poorhouses was passed, which required municipalities to create institutions to house the people with disabilities in their own communities. So in 1890, the Inverness County Asylum opened near Mabou. It's kind of adjacent to the space where Delbray is now, if you're familiar with it. And it had enough space for 32 people they called inmates in 1890. And then in 1893, the neighboring municipalities of Richmond and Victoria signed agreements with Inverness County to send patients there in lieu of creating their own facilities. And that facility, which was originally built to house 32 people, soon surpassed over 100 residents. And so that caused a number of issues. And here's a quote from one of the provincial inspectors in 1917 that I'll just read the last part. These people are housed in a cheerless, ramshackle old fire trap, which is poorly equipped and in bad repair, and which is altogether unsuited for asylum purposes. So these deteriorating conditions throughout sort of the early part of the 20th century led eventually to the conclusion that a new facility needed to be built to house the number of individuals that were living there. And sort of that period of overcrowding was really defined by a lot of disease and sickness and poor conditions for the folks living there. In 1924, a new facility, much larger facility, was built on the same site in 1924, and that facility operated until 1947 when it was destroyed by fire. There were two residents who were patients of the facility who were working in the laundry room in the basement. For their supervision, they were locked in the room, and then when the fire broke out, they didn't unlock the room, and Susan Barclay and Hannah Timmins died. And they were the last two people buried on the asylum cemetery, which I'll tell you about. So during the course of the history of the asylum, there was nearly 450 people died in the 57 years that it was active. And most of those people were returned to their home communities and their families, but there's believed to be 110 unmarked graves remain on the site on municipally owned land. And the two women who passed away in the fire were the last two buried there. After the fire, the site was sold at auction and has become, it's been an active dairy farm ever since. In 2009, a local historian named Stanley Beaton began to do pretty in-depth research on the history of the facility, who lived there, the living conditions, and also who died there. And he began also promoting a campaign for commemoration of the site and respect of the people who live there. And so as of last year, we've been working with Mr. Beaton to try and come up with a way to commemorate the site and recognize and pay respects to the folks who died and remain buried there. So like I said, at least 450 residents died at the site. There was no sort of standardized recordings of death until the early 1900s in Nova Scotia, so there may have been more earlier on. Like I said, it was overcrowded basically from 1893 up until it was rebuilt in 1924. And the number of deaths increased as the conditions at the original facility deteriorated. And in 1916, as many as 31 people died at the facility that year. Usually it was closer to 8 or 9. And like I said, those who were not collected or didn't have family to return to were buried on site. There's reports from people who worked there that Mr. Beaton's talked to, that oftentimes these burials would take place at night to not disturb the other residents and things like that. So it's quite alarming stories that he's collected over the years. So in the 57 years that the asylum operated, like I said, there were at least 447 recorded deaths. There's an estimated 110 unmarked graves on site. Of those, 88 names have been identified by Mr. Beaton through historical research. 40 are from Inverness County, 22 from Victoria County, 16 from Richmond County, 6 from outside Cape Breton, 3 from CBRM, and 1 from Port Hawkesbury. So just show you a little map of where it is. You can see Delbray Academy in the little bubble there on the right. The former asylum site is the big cornfield there. And the former cemetery is just a little plot kind of off to the side there. It remains kind of unkempt and unmarked to this day. So quickly, just what we're hoping to accomplish with the commemoration project is we're hoping to commemorate and pay respects, like I said, to the folks who lived there and were buried there. We're hoping to undertake a multi-year initiative to do some engagement and planning around how we can commemorate it, and then install some memorials to both respect those who've passed, but as well as educate the public about what went on there. Because there were as many as 15 of these institutions across the province at one point or another, and they're not really well known or commemorated. So the project, we looked around at some other similar kinds of commemoration projects that have taken place throughout North America and in Europe. And they kind of revolve around these 7 pieces, so we've kind of built our project around that. The first is truth-telling and acknowledgement, so formal statements from those who are responsible, such as the municipalities, that this was a historic injustice that we're recognizing was unjust. Family and community and government engagement, so open up a process for any remaining descendants or family who continue to be interested in talking to us about the process and how to commemorate it. Also talking to community advocates and organizations and people who live with disabilities about their thoughts on the project, as well as government partners. Public memorialization is a big piece, so creating memorials and permanent markers to commemorate this. Education and storytelling is an important piece, so capturing that history, telling the story, making it publicly available so people can know and understand what happened. Ceremony and ritual, it's always sort of good to support annual memorial rituals and things like that. This site is particularly kind of tricky because it's through a cornfield and over 2 electric fences, so it's not always accessible. So we've talked about maybe having information plaques closer to the road. There's a trailhead right across the road for the Celtic Shores Trail. But then maybe once a year having an opportunity for community to visit the site. And then funding and stewardship is important, making sure that it doesn't fall into disrepair as it has over the years. And then municipal legacies is also an important piece. I know most municipalities are required to have a diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility plan, or however you arrange the acronym. But making sure that events like this are known, that there's training available to staff about sort of the modern approaches to working with people with disabilities and things like that. So just quickly, this ties in pretty closely with the remedy you may be familiar with. It's the human rights remedy in Nova Scotia, which was a Nova Scotia Supreme Court ruling that basically, since the invention of poorhouses, we've been mistreating people with intellectual disabilities, and institutionalization is against their human rights, and that we need to change the whole system in the province. So there's a large effort underway right now, led by the provincial government, to rectify that. And it's about closing institutions and creating more individualized approaches to helping and caring for people with disabilities. And so this project is both a sort of a visible reminder of the history and the legacy of the treatment of individuals with disabilities in our communities. But also it represents kind of a turning point of how we can recognize we've learned, we've grown, and really build on that. So one of the things we want to do is engage with the province as part of that remedy work to not just commemorate this site, but all the sites across the province. And of course, ask the province for support in both the engagement and education pieces as well as the commemoration. So quickly, a proposed timeline for us is right as of right now, drafting public statements, finalizing a project plan and engagement plan over the next few months. Into early next year, through engagement and community interaction and things, finalizing a memorial plan, start to launch communications in those education pieces, and undergoing consultations on all of that. In the summer, and like I said, it's through a cornfield and across 2 electric fences, so we'll have to coordinate with harvest schedules and things like that. So it might be later on in the summer, early fall, as unveiling that memorial, having a public commemoration event, and ensuring that the community and sort of all the partners are well represented there. And then from then onward, like I said, annual events or whatever the community would like to do to commemorate that site, and ensuring that it's taken care of and the cemetery is treated with dignity. So in terms of a budget for the project, what we're anticipating is around $50,000 for a monument of some kind, and signage associated to that educational piece across at the trailhead. There's going to be some research and design of those things to create them and make sure they're accurate. Educational materials, so signage, website, any publication, things like that. Events in terms of the commemoration event and any consultations and things, and sort of miscellaneous travel, honoraria, et cetera, and then staff time, which we're providing in kind and would hope that our partners will as well. And then yearly maintenance, we would like to find an associated training program that could complement sort of the lessons we've learned from this and make that available to all municipalities. And then yearly maintenance, there's ongoing site maintenance fees, and then putting some money away to make sure that we can take care of the site and replace anything that needs replacing. So quickly, our ask is requesting our neighboring municipalities to join with us in requesting provincial support and engagement with this project. We sent a letter, at the same time we sent a letter to all our neighboring municipalities requesting the province join us. We've yet to hear anything back, so I think it would be good to send a reminder, hopefully from several municipalities. We are also asking all the partners to pass a formal resolution of acknowledgement of the asylum's history and each municipality's role in its existence and its history. And then when the site is ready, we would invite the partners to join in presenting remarks and commemorating the site when it's unveiled in 2026. In terms of sort of the tangible asks, we thought $1 per current resident towards the project costs, a one-time ask would be suitable. I forgot to take out the next part of the slide, so you can ignore that 10 cent per year. It's a cost that we're willing to take on. And then designate a staff person to work with the project team just to make sure that your municipality is represented. So overall, what that looks like would be a $9,000 ask from the municipality of the County of Richmond. Between all the municipal contributions, we would get around $50,000. Of that anticipated $100,000, and we'd request the remaining half from the province. And there's an in-kind contribution in terms of staff time. That staff time would be for your municipality, probably an hour a month, just a quick meeting, and maybe a couple longer meetings or consultations or things that's going forward. So we're looking towards, like I said, later part of summer in 2026 for when the sort of construction period would take place. So that can be next fiscal year in terms of that funding, but that's kind of where we are and what we'd like to do. So happy to take any questions.
Yeah, so just so we're clear, so you're, yeah, you're not, or you're no longer looking for the ongoing, okay, perfect, that's good. The, yeah, the other question was, so you're thinking as far as a monument or something across the road, because that was kind of what I was wondering, looking at this, that's a very much a working farm kind of thing, so, yeah,
So you see where it says to Mabu there, and the road goes up? So that's the West Mabu Road that goes to West Mabu Beach. There's a trailhead for the Celtic Shores Trail right there in a parking lot, and there's a few information panels there already. Yeah, exactly. So we would add, kind of off to the side, there's some room, and we've talked to the trails that we could add an information panel. And it's kind of nice because you're looking at the site, and the former asylum is where the farmhouse is, and you can kind of get a picture of what the site was like. And then, like I said, to get to the cemetery, you have to kind of go through the cornfield. So that would be something that we would have to sort of coordinate with the farm. You don't want to be tromping through the cornfield in late September. So just make sure that it's coordinated in terms of when the public goes to visit. And the farmer there, he's happy to accommodate. And Stanley Beaton's taken family members and things to the site over the years, and you just, call the farmer and get access. But there's no real, this is a logging road kind of going in behind it, but it's not passable by anything other than a four-wheel drive, so it's a little tricky.
yeah, the trail would actually probably be a better spot in some ways, because you're gonna get more traffic that doesn't know anything, but like, it's gonna come across it just on their own without having to know where, without having to look for it, yeah.
Well, we want to ensure that that space there, the unmarked cemetery, has much more dignity around it. And unbeknownst to me, even a number of years ago, most folks in Mabu knew that there was an asylum, but not this in-depth knowledge until Stanley approached council about his research and pressed us to work on coming together and working with our neighbors to make a proper commemoration of what the facility was about.
The asylum commemoration project that was presented tonight, what is your take on the overall project?
Yeah, it was a lot of interesting information. I think, I guess we'll get more as time goes on. Look forward to seeing the placards, however they set that up. But no, it's it's a big part of the history, I guess, of the area, and it's nice that they wanted to commemorate it.
Now, you had a question of the presenters about the fact that it's near adjacent a working farm, and were you satisfied with the answers that they provided you?
Yeah, so later on I heard too that the actual, I guess the graveyard site is municipal property, but it's just accessing it. They would have to cross the farm. I think I was a little bit more concerned on, where they wanted to set something up and whether or not it was going to be impeding the farmer, just because, as important as it is, the land was sold back in 1949, according to that information. I just kind of felt bad for the landowner if they got stuck in a situation where they were being forced into something, but it sounds good. It sounds like they've thought this out. And to be honest, I think having the information on the other side of the road, where it's right at a trail connector there's a parking lot there, and there's some little shelter buildings and so on. And you often see people there. I think that's probably a much better place to display it, because you're going to get a lot of people seeing it, like I was saying earlier, that otherwise wouldn't have known anything or wouldn't have necessarily been searching it out. So sometimes that's the best place to put these things of historical significance, where the most people will come across them.
Morgan, I guess a nice presentation, but some of the concerns I have are these public statements about our involvement with the history of this. At the time, I'm sure the people that were doing this thought they were doing the best thing. Institutions were all over. I mean, I had a family member in one. So now, I mean, our community, we have the community homes, and we brought a lot of people that were in institutions back. I think this is a lot of money. And with the province in debt like they are, I can't see them supporting this to the tune of $50,000. So what happens if you don't get the provincial money? Is this, $100,000 is a lot of money for, you're going to put monuments. How many are you putting? Is it just one, or is it the grave site that you want to?
We would work with their partnering municipalities to make a finalized design, but initially the thought was to have two markers, one along that trail bed that's also very accessible from the highway to Route 19, as well as one at the cemetery site. And in terms of the cost there, well, obviously if the province doesn't come on as a partner, or as the lead municipal unit on this project, we would have to look at some additional funding for the initiative. And the ask to our neighboring municipalities would remain the same, unless they decide themselves that they would like to contribute more if the province doesn't come on board.
Is the graveyard now not being taken care of? And the graveyard is on the farmer's property, I take it?
Yes, this is correct. It has not been taken care of. The idea was to work with the landowner to ensure that there's access permitted in order to maintain it on an ongoing basis, and to ensure that those that lay there are commemorative in a much more respectful manner.
The cemetery itself is municipally owned, but
Oh,
it's
yes, sorry, that's still
surrounded
remained. Yeah,
by
I apologize.
the farmer's property.
In terms of the language, like Morgan went back and it's all historical language that was used in his presentation. Maybe we can make adjustments going forward to other partners, but we wanted to utilize the language that was used at that time about these facilities. And your point is well taken. Obviously, the staff I'm sure did their best to help support these individuals. But at times, as Morgan pointed out, the facilities themselves were not provided the support and funding that you would hope to see such a facility be in, and the overcrowding was significant in the past.
To the points that you're asking for in terms of the request for provincial support, the court-ordered remedy is expected to cost well over $1 billion. The 50,000 here is not out of the realm of possibility, and in fact, I would be quite surprised if the province did not go good for the 50,000, given the mandate that they have been court-ordered to do. In terms of the resolution to acknowledge our role, the Premier in November of 2023 issued a 2-minute apology, video apology that he circulated to adults with disabilities in this province currently for egregious things that we did to them. This remedy is based on the fact that somebody who would have been a lovely resident at some of the places we have here, Lewsdale Group Homes, Almadam Hearts, spent 12 years living at the Nova Scotia Hospital. That is what we did up until a few years ago. So the apology that the Premier gave was not a slap in the face to people who did what they were told to do, what they thought was best, just like apologies about what we did to Japanese Canadians and internment, just like the apologies that we have been issuing around residential schools. None of those are meant to be a reflection of people who were following rules, who were doing what times of the day suggested. But in the spirit of reconciliation, which is something we should embrace in many aspects of our life, the issue of an apology to all people with disabilities, and then this from the Premier, I think that it is a nice act on our part to acknowledge that we were following in the footsteps of those around us. These weren't terrible people who did this, but there are at least 16 Richmond County residents with disabilities living in an unmarked grave in a cornfield. So, over to you.
I wanted to provide a couple comments, not really in response to anything, just from your presentation in general. And first of all, want to commend Stanley Beaton for bringing this to your attention. I mean, we have a section on our agenda at our committee of the whole for community acknowledgements, and I know he's not from Richmond County, but I'm skipping ahead, Warden, and I'm acknowledging his good work on this because I think it's important work. And I would agree with the Warden. I think there would be a real appetite politically to support this. And I know that budget conversation at this point in the game, especially where our current year grant funds are pretty much depleted, we've been investing heavily in community. I think this is something we're probably going to need to discuss at budget, and I'd be prepared to make a motion to that effect. What I would like to also do, though, and Morgan, you're still a great storyteller, by the way, great job. I would like to have this conversation directed to our IDEA committee for more kind of conversation. What are other ways that maybe we could be working at a committee level to support, acknowledgement of this, and maybe that's a group that could be engaged in part of the, the statement preparation, that kind of thing. So, when it's time, I'll be happy to make motions to that effect. And great job. Thank you for bringing it forward.
I don't know if either of you were in Judic for L'Arche Cape Breton's Spring Fling, but they, every year as part of that, they do a tableau performance, and they did it on the history of where we were and how we got to the remedy. It includes the Inverness Asylum. It is something. I don't know if you got a chance to see it, but it is something.
We had staff members there who talked about it, and it was the first time a lot of people from the community heard about the asylum. So we'd really like to engage them and maybe do another one of those performances at the event. It was important.
So, is there anybody else have any discussion before we get to the possibility of motions? Okay, so, let's go ahead.
Just to add, some historians also point out that sometimes it wasn't just individuals with challenges and disabilities. Sometimes it was people that were in inconvenience with family that would end up in one of these facilities. So that's why it's been so challenging to use the correct language, because historically we don't know for sure why most of the people were in the facilities, and it could be a wide ranging, but that's why we're using the more the remedy language currently, but I understand that some people may not have fit under that definition that were at the facilities.
So, to me, we have one motion that would defer the funding conversation to budget deliberation, which is not a commitment, it's a deferral to budget deliberations. But I would be interested, certainly, I chair this meeting, so I'm not able to make motions, but I would certainly be hopeful that we would put forth a motion to join the request for provincial support and pass a resolution to acknowledge the role. So I'll throw that out to staff. Councillor Member Kep?
Thanks, Warden, and I am prepared to make those motions, but I do want to say I think the language that you're using, although difficult to hear, is the right language to bring a shocking amount of attention to this, because this is the history. We can't pretend it's otherwise. So I will start by making a motion to defer this request for funding of $9,000 to budget.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Lumbercat, seconded by Deputy Warden Sampson. Is there any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried.
I'll jump back in. Thank you, Warden. I would also like to make a motion to sign the joint project request. I just lost the wording on the screen there, but that's okay. It was like coming out of my mouth. But just to sign the joint request for provincial support, to add Richmond County's name to that, and also to to acknowledge our role in the Inverness County Asylum by passing a resolution, which I think we could engage our IDEA committee on in preparing. That was a mouthful.
Okay, so that
Thank you.
resolution includes the two parts. Join a request for provincial support and pass resolution, and then kind of passing it on to the IDEA committee. I don't think they. Would you Will to see it as 2? Okay. Well, the motion on the floor is for 2. So do we have a seconder on the motion? Seconded by Deputy Warden Sampson. Any discussion on that? Would you like to make an amendment, Councillor Marchand, to separate? No. Okay. Okay, so any other discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Nay, and have that recorded, please. Great. So thank you very much. Very grateful for you taking the long drive here and dodging the deer on your way. And yeah, you'll be dodging further. So thank you very much. Very worthwhile project, and our thanks to Mr. Beaton for taking this on. It's definitely God's work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, the project in Inverness County, the asylum commemoration, what's your overall take on it? I know their ask was about $9,000, and then annually for stewardship, I believe it was 10 cents a resident. I know it's hard for you to say right now if you guys can afford it because you guys really haven't discussed it in detail, but what's your overall take on the project in general?
So just to clarify, they actually did tell us that they don't need the annual support. So they're able to deal with, so it's a one-time based on $1 per resident. And so, you know, I hope the folks listening to this interview get a chance to hear kind of a little bit of the presentation that came, but many thanks to a gentleman by the name of Stanley Beaton, who I had not heard of before, who decided to take on a kind of an investigation and a research project around the asylum in Mabou. And we in Richmond County, our forefathers did what was done at the time. It's not meant to be a criticism of actions any one person took, but the decisions of the day was to take our marginalized, vulnerable folks out of their communities and put them in this asylum in Inverness County. And so this gentleman found, I think, 110 unmarked graves. And of those, I think they've identified close to 88-ish. Might have those numbers wrong, but around 88. And of those 88, 16 people are from Richmond County. So 15, 16, maybe more people from Richmond County are in unmarked graves somewhere far from home. And so I'm happy to support that $9,000 when it comes time to deliberate that in the next budget year. Certainly our responsibility as councillors is to be good stewards of resources, but I have to be able to sleep at night, and we all need to do the human thing. So there's that issue. The second issue that we voted on also was to ask the province to join in Inverness County's ask of the province to contribute to a commemorative project that would educate folks and let people know about what happened, and to take some steps to educate folks as a way of righting that wrong, and also to issue a proclamation to talk about our involvement in that.
RCMP Northeast Traffic Services charged a 20-year-old man from Bear Head after a crash on Highway 4. On October 16th at around 9:57 p.m., the RCMP said a Northeast Traffic Services officer clocked an eastbound Honda Civic in Irish Cove traveling at approximately 185 kilometers an hour in an 80 kilometers an hour zone. The vehicle did not stop when the officer attempted to conduct a traffic stop, the RCMP said, noting that the officer did not pursue the vehicle so as not to further endanger the public. Approximately 15 minutes later, the RCMP said the officer learned that a Honda Civic had flipped over off the highway east of Big Pond, and the male driver ran to a nearby residence. Officers located the man a short time later and conducted a roadside breath test, resulting in a fail, the police said. The suspect was arrested and transported to the North Sydney RCMP office, where he provided breath samples of 1.5 times the legal limit, the RCMP said. The RCMP said the suspect has been charged with stunting, impaired operation of a motor vehicle, and operation of a motor vehicle over the legal limit. They added that he was released on an appearance notice and is scheduled to appear in Sydney Provincial Court in December. RCMP Northeast Traffic Services thanked officers from Cape Breton Regional Police who assisted with the crash. The Emergency Medical Services Exemplary Service Medal investiture took place recently at Government House in Halifax. The first bearer to the Emergency Medical Services Exemplary Service Medal in recognition of 30 years of service was awarded to Barry Tracy of Petit de Gras. The Emergency Medical Services Exemplary Service Medal in recognition of 20 years of service went to Rod Sampson of Little Ants. The Lieutenant Governor's office said the recipients were honored for contributing to pre-hospital emergency medical services. Created by Queen Elizabeth II in 1994, the award recognizes individuals working in high-risk jobs that enhance public safety. Recipients have been selected for this honor based on exemplary conduct and a minimum of 20 years of service, many of which involve potential risk. The Department of Environment and Climate Change announced that the town of Port Hawkesbury and the municipality of the County of Richmond are among the municipalities taking action to protect themselves from the impacts of global climate change under the Community Climate Capacity Program, the province said. The government said Richmond County is developing a climate plan and framework to prepare for extreme weather through flood mapping and inundation modeling, also by advancing clean energy and fuel use strategies. Port Hawkesbury is developing a climate resilience process plan by increasing understanding of climate impacts through broader community engagement and strengthening funding applications for local climate priorities, the province noted. The Community Climate Capacity Program was launched in 2023 to help municipalities, Mi'kmaq communities, and community groups build capacity to make their communities resilient to climate change. The Community Climate Capacity Program was launched in 2023 to help municipalities, Mi'kmaq communities, and community groups build capacity to make their communities resilient to climate change impacts such as wildfires, drought, and flooding. Municipalities are on the front lines of climate change, experiencing firsthand the impacts of flooding, drought, and wildfires, said Pam Mood, president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities. Programs like the Community Climate Capacity Program are vital in helping local governments strengthen their ability to plan, adapt, and protect their residents. NSFM is pleased to see continued collaboration between the province, Clean Foundation, and municipalities as we work together to build more resilient communities across Nova Scotia, Mood added. The province said this is the second group of communities to be supported under the program. The first included 16 municipalities, 1 Mi'kmaq community, and 2 community organizations. To date, the government has invested $7.3 million in the Community Climate Capacity Program. Clean Foundation administers the program on behalf of the government. Over the past year, we've worked alongside Nova Scotian communities to identify and support their climate goals, and we're seeing firsthand what coastal communities need, said Scott Skinner, President and CEO of Clean Foundation. By expanding the program, our team can offer more support where the risks of coastal hazards are greatest, helping communities build resilience through local climate solutions and securing them additional support for priority projects, Skinner added. Among the Emergency Services Provider Fund Spring 2025-2026 grant recipients were the Grand River Volunteer Fire Department, which was approved for scene lighting, hoses, nozzles, adapters, strainers, a suction hose, porta-tanks, and portable pumps to the tune of $29,703.63. The Almadam Volunteer Fire Department was greenlit for $30,000 for self-contained breathing apparatuses. The Loch Lomond Volunteer Fire Department was also approved for $30,000 for pump and tank skid units. Another $30,000 went to the Lewsdale Volunteer Fire Department for personal protective equipment, bunker gear, helmets, boots, gloves, flash hoods, coveralls, helmet lights, hoses, nozzles, and portable pumps. The Port Hastings Volunteer Fire Department also received $30,000 for self-contained breathing apparatuses. To purchase bunker gear, helmets, boots, gloves, and flash hoods, $28,539.22 went to the Port Hawkesbury Volunteer Fire Department. The Lordways and District Volunteer Fire Department received $29,902.52 for bunker gear, helmets, boots, gloves, and flash hoods. The provincial government said it is supporting more than twice as many first responder organizations across Nova Scotia this year with grants for equipment through the Emergency Services Provider Fund, available to fire departments, hazardous materials units, and ground search and rescue crews. The province added that 144 organizations will receive up to $30,000 each. Thank you for watching. Please tune in again to find out what we will be talking about on The Record.